Will the German Reich be reinstated and dominate Europe and the so-called Western world? I say Reich instead of empire, you know. In the English-speaking world, the German Reich is called German Empire, and I deliberately say Reich because Reich is not translated with empire. Reich is more accurately translated with something like realm or sphere. In my opinion, the British Empire, the French Empire, the Russian Empire were more empires because, in my definition, an empire is a political structure, a dominion over multiple nations. And the German Reich, Deutsches Reich, is more likely a Reich, a realm of the German people. You know, in my eyes, you know, my idea of the German Reich, and people could differ. You know, maybe my ancestors or other people had different opinions about the German Reich, but I think the Reichsidee, the idea of the German Reich, was more connected. It was more an ethnic definition, you know, meaning that the German Reich would be a alliance between different tribes and nations who have German origin, you know. For example, a German Reich would be mainly a military alliance between Bavarians, Saxons, Prussians, Swedes, Danish, maybe Holland, you know, Austria. That would be the German Reich. And more closely connected would obviously be the countries that actually speak German, and more loosely connected would be the countries that speak other Germanic languages like Dutch or Swedish or Danish. So, in my idea, the German Reich is just a military alliance between different German tribes to protect against global corporate interest or against other empires. So, just for for purposes of definition, terminology. Now, what would make somebody believe, and nowadays, that the German Reich would come back? You know, doesn't it look extremely unlikely? But in my opinion, this is not so unlikely at all. And for this line of thought that I want to lay out here, I want to make clear that I'm not talking about personal preference. I'm not talking about whether I want a German Empire or a German Reich to come back or not. I'm just thinking about what could happen, what is likely to happen. And I want to lay out several points that could speak for the reinstallment of the German Reich in the near future. Point 1. Multiculturalism and atomization of society. Through mass immigration, mainly one specific thing happens. Mass immigration makes democracy impossible. Mass immigration leads to a splintering of society and a division of the interests between different groups in society, which makes the country ungovernable in a democratic manner. Because multiculturalism, in effect, turns a country into a multi-ethnic state. And all multi-ethnic states in history have been empires. Empires who are ruled by a despot, by a monarch, by a single military elite, you know, not by a democracy, you know. democracies always only emerged and were successful in ethnically homogeneous small communities, you know, small cities, small tribes. Ancient Athens, the Germanic tribes of the north, where each tribe would elect its own king for a certain period of time and then elect a new king. This is a form of democracy. No empire, not the Roman Empire, which was a republic, but that also was an empire ruled by a Kaiser, you know, by an emperor. No empire, not the Persian Empire, not the Russian Empire, not the British Empire. No empire was ever ruled democratically. It was either ruled by an oligarchy, by an aristocracy, by a financial elite. There is no such thing as an empire, a multi-ethnic empire who rules over different languages and tribes. There's no such thing as a multi-ethnic democracy. This doesn't exist. It's completely opposite of what the word democracy means. So this is the reason why it is possible, or even very likely, that Germany will become a kind of monarchy again. Second point, why would it be a German monarchy, a German Reich, and not just any kind of, you know, monarchy? Why wouldn't there be an Arab king or something in Germany? Because still the Germans are the core population, and once and I base my line of thought, my train of thoughts, I base it on the proposition that that somehow the current political system collapses, you know, the EU collapses, the Western power structure collapses, you know, in any way, which also is very likely if you look at the current state of affairs, you know, of the political division, you know, the inability of parties to form, you know, governable majorities, you know, in countries. So when something here collapses and the new system is needed, why wouldn't there be an Arab king or a Turkish king in Germany? Because still the Germans are the core population, and when the collapse happens, all the sugar given out to the population, you know, the social benefits, the money, the free money that is given out, this will immediately stop, because the new government, the new system will not be able to afford all the stuff, you know, which is partly the reason why the system collapses in the first place. All the handouts, you know, to people who in the majority don't produce anything. So when this happens, the attractiveness of Germany for parasites, for people who just come here to leech off of the system, rapidly decreases, and many people will flee the country again and go back to their homelands. And I don't mean just, you know, lowlifes or, you know, very poor people. I mean anybody. You know, I talk to migrants, and many told me that, you know, they are often very proud people, you know, like people from Iraq, or, you know, they are very proud people. They don't consider themselves as, you know, just some kind of lowlife. They come here often in a sense of adventure, you know. They think, oh, there's a lot of free stuff to gain there. There's you know, why not go there and leech something off, you know, have a nice life there. There's a lot of nice infrastructure. Just let's go there, have a look, you know, it's for free. Why, excuse me, why the F shouldn't I go there and have a look, you know, and have some party, you know? And all these people who come for these reasons, for this adventurism, they will immediately go back, because they exactly know that they are much happier where they come from, where they have also houses and lives and family and everything, you know. Just for Germany alone, you know, nobody stays here. It's not attractive, neither for the climate, and especially not only the reason why this is not attractive is not only the climate, but exactly the multiculturalism. Because for anybody who is conscious of his own ethnicity and culture, it's not attractive to live in a multicultural state ridden with crime and social problems and propaganda, indoctrination, you know. why should you constantly fight for your right to have your own schools and your own communities if you just can go back to your home country where you have all that for free without the additional emotional cost of establishing this? So this is a reason why it is attractive for people then to go back, and why it is very likely for Germans to regain control again, and you know, and also to regain a certain ethnic homogeneity. The next thing is, why is it likely to be a German Reich that is coming back? Because all the liberals and leftists that are now screaming, you know, oh, all Nazis and, you know, my poor migrants and my poor women's rights and all this stuff, they don't make babies. They are the same kind of hedonist that I just described, you know, this adventurous kind of guy who comes here to check it out, to travel around, to get free money and waste it on alcohol and movies, whatever, you know. This kind of guy is also the typical leftist. It's a hedonist person that makes not many babies and that is not very politically seriously engaged. He's not seriously engaged in his own community, with the workers there, with the artisans and craftsmen, with the bricklayer or anything, you know. He's just an internationally minded traveler and a certain, like, you know, a parasite who lives for his own enjoyment and his own dopamine rush, you know. They're not deeply engaged, and if they were deeply engaged, they would already have stable families with many children and a foot in reality, you know. So since the traditionally minded people are more likely to reproduce, and the liberal people are dying out on a massive scale, you know, because I mean, liberal people become gay and lesbian, transsexual, and you know, with applause, and you know, they applaud. They go on the street on a manifestation to applaud for the legalization of birth, you know, of abortion. You know, how insane is that? This is just you know, self-defeating completely, you know, like they lose all credibility with that, and they lose all future. Liberal people are likely to be vegan, which also reduces fertility, and which induces so many problems, that it creates so many problems for your personal life, that you become totally engaged with your nutrition, you know, all your energy is concentrated on the question of feeding yourself, whereas other people, they just eat anything they can get and what they feel like eating, and they can use their mental capacities for other stuff, you know, for political stuff, for productive stuff, for making more babies, for example. So the whole liberal mindset is prone to extinction, you know, it's a self-extinctive ideology, basically, liberalism, you know. So this again, in the longer run, makes it much more likely that traditional people reproduce and take control, you know. When the liberals are proud of their long march through the institutions, where they said, you know, well, over the last 30 years, since the '68 revolution of the hippies, you know, we just infiltrated all the government institutions with leftist people. That's fine, you know, they did that, fine, but all of these people are childless or have few children, one child, one egotistical child that will not make babies himself. And then this administrative class, which we have right now, is dying out right now. The current administrative system has no offspring, they have no follow-up. They have no follow-up civil servants. This is why they have to rely on AI now. But this is also not very effective, in my opinion. So the very political class that is proud of having infiltrated all the institutions now and gained control and, you know, propagating the leftist agenda is dying out, and by doing so, disproving its own ideology on a massive scale. You know, this is, I mean, how much more obvious can it get? You know, It's like I have a guy sitting next to me who desperately wants to drive the car, and after nagging for hours, I say, you know, I always think, no, you can't drive. Please don't drive the car. Let me drive. It's much more easy. We will soon be there, and then we'll have a party, whatever. But he's nagging, and he says, no, I want to drive the car. Let me drive. I want to drive. You know, you're driving like, you know, you're driving badly. And finally, I let this guy drive the car, and the first thing that he does is driving the car against the wall and killing us both, or like, no, killing him. I survive injured. What did he just do? He just proved that he can't drive, and that he, you know, he destroyed my car, or the car. This is what the left has done. They desperately wanted to take control of our government and our propaganda institutions and everything, education, everything. And they just drove the car against the wall. That's it. And it's over now. It's finished. That's another reason why it is likely that very conservative circles will come back to power and will reinstate the German Empire, the German Reich, Germany. The next reason why it's likely that the German Empire will come back, and not only come back, but will gain a dominant role in our modern geopolitical system. I propose, or I suggest that the Western system, Anglo-America, will most likely lose their power to a large extent because they are in shambles. They are very in deep debt, you know, and they have a lot of economical problems, and they have a lot of competition from China now. They are engaged in many, you know, wars which drain their energies, you know, and if they engage in war with Iran, this could very well mean the total collapse of the Western power system. So if the oppressive power of Anglo-American Empire, Anglo-American Israeli Empire, to be honest, if this is gone, then, you know, somebody else will take the lead. That's just natural. And who would it be? It would be the one with the best prerequisites. And if you look at Germany, let's just also assume that oil is becoming more and more scarce, you know, that there's an energy scarcity in the world, and the prices of oil will go up. Right now, the political left is propagating against coal, but Germany has coal for like thousands of years. We have gigantic coal deposits, and we have the technology to turn this coal into fuel. It's called coal liquefaction, if I'm not mistaken, or coal hydrification. Kohlehydrierung is the German word. It was developed. The development started during the First World War, and it was finished in the 30s. And in 1943, we had 50% of our fuel supply coming from coal, from surface mine coal. And in my opinion, this was one of the many reasons why Germany was taken out. You know, one of the many economic reasons Germany was taken out by the oil industry. You know, just one of many reasons. You know, just to make it clear, because we were on the road to being oil independent. You know, which obviously is not in the interests of the international oil industry. But this just as a side note. When oil runs out and the petrodollar loses its power, there's a power vacuum in the West, and a country with the know-how and with the technology to turn massive amounts of coal into fuel will be completely energy independent, and all the fuel shortages of the world wars because of blockades are then becoming irrelevant. We will be completely independent from that. And nobody will be able to challenge us, you know, invade us or whatever. We will have enough fuel to power our war machines and anything, you know. There will be no problem with that. The next factor, energy-wise, is global warming. You know, it is obvious that there is global warming going on, we now have outside 15 degrees Celsius, and we are in the depth of winter. You know, we are on the 15th of January 2020, and we have 15 degrees outside. You know, I had winters where I worked on the Christmas market, and it was snowing everywhere, and Christmas markets before Christmas, and it was snowing everywhere. There were thick layers of ice on the rivers, and it was minus 20 degrees, you know, in December. This December was very mild, and now we are in January, which is supposed to be the coldest month of the year in Germany, and we have 15 degrees outside. There's obviously global warming. Now, I'm not freaking out about that. I don't care if this is man-made or not. I just observe that it is happening. I don't believe the world will cease to exist, you know. I'm not an apocalyptic fearmonger. I don't think the apocalypse is upon us. Absolutely not. It's just getting warmer. Just like it was in, 2,000 years ago, Europe was also quite warm. They were growing wine. They had vineyards in Norway and all this stuff. So it's getting warmer again, which means that the northern sphere is becoming more powerful again, because obviously cold climate drains energy. In the world wars, we had not only to fuel our tanks and our weapons, but we also had to keep our population warm, which means that we have to extract coal, distribute it, and to not have our women and children freeze at home while the soldiers are on the front lines. So you need energy in the winter. If you have warm winters, you need no energy or less energy than before, which frees more energy for war effort, for defensive purposes, for any other purpose, you know, for research, for whatever. It frees resources. The next thing is food stability. Both world wars were lost through blockades of trade routes. Germany was always dependent on exporting goods and importing food, you know, and raw materials. Now, if the climate becomes warmer, we can, you know, in the winter the grass keeps growing, the cows can stay outside. They don't need to be in a heated place inside. They can stay outside. They can keep grazing. We don't need too much hay that we have to stockpile. And all this biomass is converted into meat and milk, which then feeds the population. And in the most extreme case, we can even have multiple harvests of certain crops. You know, if there's no frost, you can possibly harvest some crops twice a year, which alleviates a lot of food problems. And on top of that, our population has imploded. We are now much less people than in the world wars. We also have less territory, but we are less people also, which alleviates all these problems with which outside forces, outside empires and competitors on the geopolitical level could threaten us and blockade us and cut us off from raw materials. You know, the point is, we are now in this modern world, you know, if global warming stays like this or even gets warmer, we are much more independent and much more stable on every level. This is the reason why the German country, the German Reich, if it comes back, might have a very strong position and dominate in the so-called Western world. The next reason why it could dominate is because, unlike in Germany, the Germans and the German Reich has a very good reputation in the world. When I traveled around, wherever I came with my German passport and with my German appearance, I was welcomed with open arms. You know, people treated me with so much sympathy and hospitality. It was just crazy. I had never expected something like that, you know. And everywhere I went, I was astonished that all these people spoke so positively about Germany, not only in its modern state, But about the German Reich, you know, even the Third Reich, even Adolf Hitler, he was like in countries like Bolivia or, you know, where I went, he was mostly sometimes like a hero, you know, and or the German generals like Rommel, he's very famous outside of Germany. And in general, the German achievements, the German, you know, music, the German technological achievements, philosophy and cultural achievements are held in very high regard outside Germany, up to the point that many countries, you know, educational, political, military systems are modeled after the old Prussian, you know, models, which apparently are very effective and very good. You know, like take countries like Chile or Japan. They borrowed a lot in their administrative system from the Germans. And in many other aspects, Germany is seen as a very good country in the world, and Germans are everywhere very well received. People have very good experiences with Germans, you know, as tourists. If you take away the low life tourism like Mallorca or, you know, where all the drunkards go, but the usual tourist in the world, the usual German tourist, which is you know, more of the middle class, is very, very well received and held in high regard in the world. Whereas countries like America, they are not very welcome. They are in the, you know, they're said to be rude, and, you know, they don't make an effort to speak the local language. They think everybody speaks English, and they are, you know, held as arrogant. And this is also reflected in their politics. You know, everybody knows that America is some kind of empire. You know, the Israel is not very well received because of their politics against the Palestinians, because of their arrogance. The Anglo-Israeli Empire is hated in the world, and the Germans are very much loved in the world, at least in my experience. And this is something that I hadn't expected when I ventured out into the world after I left school. I had not expected to be so well received and to see and to hear so many positive opinions about Germany outside of Germany, because what you get in Germany is just the most vile and denigrating propaganda. You know, like you learn in Germany basically in school and every day in TV and radio that Germany is the most evil country and the most despicable people of the world that just kill and subdue and, you know, tread on everybody. But outside of Germany, you know, I went in South Africa, and I saw like black people running around with the tricot, you know, with the shirt of the German national football team, and they told me, I love Germany, you know, Germany is the big mother of the world, or something like that, they told me. And it's really crazy, you know. You wouldn't expect that if you grow up in Germany. You wouldn't expect that from these people, you know. If the Germans are really the most evil people in the world who just want to exterminate everybody and who hate everybody else, it's just not the case, you know. It's just propaganda that you get dripped in every day, relentlessly. It's just it's a question of sympathy. The people in the world are sympathetic towards Germany and the German Reich, and this makes it more likely that the German Reich will come back and be successful. It makes it very unlikely for the American Empire, for the United States of America, for the Anglo-American Empire to stay on top. I mean, if you look at countries like England, England is hated by its own British co-nationals. You have like Welsh people. I was in northern Wales, where almost 100% of the people speak Welsh, ancient Celtic. And whenever an Englishman buys or builds a house there, the local population burns the house down. That happens regularly. That's not something uncommon in northern Wales. They hate the English. The Scottish hate the English. Maybe even the Cornish hate the English. I'm not sure about that. But definitely the Northern Irish also hate the English. And there are not many English left. There are towns in England like Birmingham which have 80% ethnic non-English people living there. The eastern coast of England is being colonized by Polish. You know of communities where 60% of the people are newly arrived Poles. So England ethnically is almost, you know, it's on a very fast track of becoming completely gone. And you know what will hold up the British Empire? Do you think a multicultural cesspool of division and hate and ridiculous problems and bickering? Do you think that this system will hold up a political power, you know, the Commonwealth or whatever? It's just insane to believe something like that. This whole Anglo-American system is collapsing, and nobody will shed a single tear in saying goodbye. You know, nobody will care. They will all just say good riddance. You know, and they will welcome. And it's likely that they will welcome the German Reich when it comes back with open arms and say, finally, this charade is over, and we can breathe clean air again. You know, so there are more points. The German Reich, as a political, as a economic zone, is likely to come back. Why? We already have an economic zone. We already have an empire in Europe. You know. Now, is it likely that the EU will completely break apart? I don't think so, because a common economic zone also provides benefits in trade and in economy and industry. It provides benefits towards outside competitors like China. You know, it's more easily to negotiate and to keep independent from Chinese influence if you have a certain alliance, you know, with other nations in a certain trade zone. Now, is it wise to connect Northern and Southern Europe in one trade zone? Not really. The EU has proven that this is very disadvantageous for the Southern European people. You know, they want to leave the EU. Look at the Grexit thing. You know, they wanted to leave. England wants to leave the EU. Now, is it therefore likely that the entire EU will fall apart? Maybe the EU, yes, but it doesn't mean that not an economic alliance will stay. And what is most likely to stay is an economic alliance in the center of Europe, and specifically in those places which have a similar infrastructure and which therefore have a similar economy, and therefore also they have a similar ethnic background. You know, in Poland, for example, many countries, many lands, they have the people who live there are ethnic Germans, and many Poles are ethnic Indo-Europeans, you could say. You know, Polish and German people have a similar or common ethnic background, and this makes it very likely. And then they even have a similar historical background where Polish territories used to be German, have German architecture, where the German names are still written on the walls, the German business plaques and everything. And all that makes it likely that certain parts of Poland will form together with Germany a common market. And why are there also incentives to have a common administration, even under German language? Because, and this is another point that I thought about, the German Empire, when it was strong, invested billions and billions of funds into science. And out of this investment came a product, which is scientific knowledge. And scientific knowledge never really gets outdated. It can even be lost and has to be rediscovered. Scientific methods, scientific thinking, scientific books are very, very valuable, especially in an age where all the science is tainted by propaganda, by ideology, and by the throwaway society. You know, if you have real science that is actually interested in technological advance and in actual, you know, positive contributions, then the science that was established, all the books written about history, archaeology, you know, natural science like chemistry and physics, all these books are still dormant, are still lying in gigantic libraries everywhere in Germany, and it creates an incentive to learn German and study this material. You know, it's a resource. Science and books and artifacts are a resource, and this resource can only be tapped if you learn German. Otherwise, the Polish government, for example, they can invest billions and billions of zlotys into research and write all these scientific theses themselves, but that would be a waste of money. It's much easier to learn German and study what was already established. And you know, this is just an idea, this is just a philosophical thought, you know. How it turns out in detail is to be determined. But I do think there's an incentive to learn German, and this is also reflected in the idea that the German language used to be the scientific language of Europe in the 19th century, because it is very precise and it lends itself very well for scientific publications because of its clarity of structure, you know, because you can express technical details very well with the German language. The next incentive for the people in the common zone for learning to learn German is the question of the language of trade. Exactly, you know, if you have a zone like the EU nowadays, the trade language in the EU is English. But if there is a new trade zone in the center of Europe which is dominated by Germany, obviously the trade language will become German. And once all the people in the zone learn German in school, all the people who are of ethnic German background will also naturally start speaking German again. You know, all the Silesian people, all the Prussian people with Prussian ancestry. So I'm not talking about dominance, about conquest, about replacing Poles with Germans, about the Germanification of Poland. I'm talking about natural processes of assimilation that could take place if there is a new German economic zone established in the center of Europe, which would, in the long run, lead to an ethnic German Reich again. The next point is the rediscovery of the German beauty, you know, of the beauty that was created in the German Reich. You know, all the cultural achievements, all the craft, the beautiful architecture, the sculptures, the paintings. There's just such a gigantic treasure of beauty dormant in Germany, which is never brought to daylight, because nowadays our culture is dominated by leftist, liberal, globalist art, which is completely, you know, it's completely removed from the nation, from the people, from the local people, from the Heimat, from the sense of beauty that the people in a certain place have from their local crafts. It's completely arbitrary. I don't know if arbitrary is the word, but it's completely irrelevant to most people. You know, there's this saying in Germany where you say, "Oh, is this art or can I throw this away?" You know, it's like you imagine the cleaner in your house who picks up something and asks if this is art or waste and can go to the bin. You know, this is the sentiment that people have towards art nowadays. You know, art, nobody really has a connection to art, and it's just, you know, what is art? It's bullshit for most people. But when people start to rediscover the amazing beauty of local and national art, and you know what the Royal Academies of Art in the German Reich produced, they will be awestruck. You know, they will be struck with amazement, and they will just love this, and they will want to recreate that, and they want to come back to a time which is beautiful. And there's another phenomenon that makes this very likely, and the phenomenon is the emotionalization of society, where over long decades the politics have become dumbed down, and people have been trained to look at appearances and not really at content. And there is a reason why almost all the films that were made in National Socialist Germany are banned, and they are banned regardless of their hateful or racist content. They're just banned by default, and because of the propaganda. And why is that? Because the people in these old films and movies, they look so extremely handsome, healthy and beautiful, and a population that is trained to only look at appearances will immediately think, wow, those guys were awesome, they were great, I want to have a National Socialist Reich as well. This is what our education system has trained the people to react like, you know? It's their own fault. They've dug their own grave with the dumbing down of society and the emotionalization of society, with the superficialization of society. They have dug their own grave because they cannot present this kind of stuff. The transgender activist cannot represent beauty. He cannot be beautiful. It's impossible, you know? A man who tries to be a woman cannot be as beautiful as a natural woman, as a healthy natural woman. It's completely impossible. And the woman in the war, you know, a woman as an artillery officer or a woman as a machine gunner cannot be as handsome as a man as a machine gunner, because there are many men who absolutely like operating a machine gun and find that very exciting, and they are strong and they look good at a machine gun, and you know, but women are most likely to look very stressed and very out of place at a machine gun, which defeats the whole purpose of training the people to look at appearances. Because when people are trained to look at appearances, they will say, wow, the German Reich, the 19th century German art is amazing, it's beautiful, it's great, the system must have been a very good system. They will look at video footage from the Third Reich, and they will say, amazing, the Third Reich was great, you know? This is the dumbed down society. The dumbed down society that leftist, corporate, capital, environmentalism, feminism, social justiceism, the degenerated and superficial, dumbed down society that all these movements, these leftist movements have created, naturally leads to fascism, you could say. It leads to monarchy. It leads back to the German Reich, you know? And they probably didn't do this on purpose, but I wonder if they are still able to comprehend that. I wonder if they are still capable, with their dopamine-driven minds, with their drug-addicted minds, and their sexualized, selfish, egotistical minds, I wonder if they are still capable of comprehending these contexts with their degenerated minds. It's really an interesting question. Or if they will just go down with the ship, and not ever be aware of what is actually happening and what they themselves helped to create, and what they paved the way for, basically, with their policies. So yeah, this is the next point. The superficial society, the dumbed down society is another open floodgate for the German Reich to come back, because people will just so easily accept an awesome Prussian infantry over some random multicultural dude with a machine gun who is ruling over them, who has nothing to do with them. The typical German will welcome a handsome guy, a modern Prussian infantry, dressed in self-made costumes that his women have made for him, in handcraft, in natural, sustainable, local handcraft, made his uniform. They will welcome this guy with open arms to police the street against all the rapists and all the criminals that have become, that have been set loose by the left. Why wouldn't they welcome the guy with the awesome uniform to bring back law and order? Of course they will welcome them. This is what the left has prepared the way for. Did I have the last point why I think, this video is becoming very long. The last point why I think it is actually likely that the German Empire is coming back, the German Reich, to be honest, to be precise. The last point is the modern values. What do modern people value? Why will they welcome the German Reich with open arms? Because we now, every leftist, every normal person values environmentalism, sustainability, quality craft, quality products. Videos on YouTube where they build a timber frame house have millions of views. This is what people love. They don't love the throwaway society. So they love environmental protection, animal rights, feminism, the equal treatment of men and women, the respect for women. Let's take the respect for women. Give me one national anthem that has the respect for women in the first verse. The German national anthem of the German Empire has the respect for women in their first verse. And it says, German women, German loyalty, German wine and German song should keep in the world their good old sound, basically. They should keep, they should be preserved, So basically it says that the German woman, this good German woman, should be protected in the world, So I don't know. I have probably many international viewers. Just check your national anthems, what they talk about in the first line, So yeah, Germany always had a gigantic respect, a tremendous respect for women, and the woman was always, held in very high esteem in Germany, regardless of Christianity or whatever, or the current political system. In the German soul, in the mind of the normal German person, of the common German national, the woman always has a very high regard. And I can prove that even with quotes from people that I met. When I came back from my travels in Latin America, I spoke often in Spanish with Latin people who lived here. And once on a market where I was working, there was this I think she was Argentinian or something, and she was a woman selling stuff there, selling her handicrafts on the market. And I asked her, why why did she came to Germany? And she told me, because the German people treat women so well, you know. And yeah, it's just that when I say this is a very standard value of the German people to treat women well, this is not just my idea or propaganda or whatever. This is what also people reflected to me, you know, who said that to me from their own experience. The next thing, you know, what is held in high esteem nowadays? Environmental protection, you know. The German NABU, which is the association for the German standard association for environmental protection, you know, this activist group called NABU, the Naturschutzbund, you know, the association for protecting the environment, they were created in the German Reich, and they were initially they were called Heimatschutzbund, you know, the Bund to protect the Heimat, you know, the home, and it included not only the nature, it was also obviously for protecting the nature, because back then there was a lot of industrialization and a lot of destruction of nature, and but it was also to protect the cultural heritage, you know, to protect a beautiful ruin of a castle, you know. This is a valuable thing, you know. This castle, this burial mound, is a valuable historical treasure, and it should be preserved. And this is what the Heimatschutzbund started to popularize, you know, to protect your cultural and natural heritage. And it's an invention of the German Empire, the German Reich from the 19th century. You know, environmental protection was even more put into law in the time between 33 and 45. You know, in the National Socialist Germany, there were also more laws passed to protect the environment. Adolf Hitler put the first laws of animal protection into practice, you know. So all the modern values take sustainability. The modern system is a system of throwing away everything and of wasting stuff just so that the industry can make more money, you know. They deliberately create things that break down after some time so they can sell a new item later on. And the German system was always diametrically opposed to that. The German system was a system of being proud of traditional quality craftsmanship, you know, individual craftsmen delivering quality work. That was the pride of the German, and that was also the greatest threat for the Anglo-American economic system that had been established in the world, for the colonial system. And this is also a reason why the German Reich, when it was created, was warmongered against from the beginning, you know. So the wars were planned basically from the beginning. The destruction of Germany was an interest of the British, Anglo-American, Israeli class, elite, you know, economic system, however you want to call it. And all these values that were the German values are now the core values of basically everybody, especially of the left. And this is why the left will realize that yes, the return of the German Reich with all its values is beneficial to everybody, and it will happen. And that the German Reich will in its beginning be some kind of monarchy, or, you know, maybe there will be an emperor or something like that to rule it in the beginning. That is just likely because of the high level of division that will be present in the beginning. Basically a result of the ungovernability of Germany and of this Central European basin in its current state. So that was a very long video, and I hope you you could follow all the way through. I hope you understand that I am not making propaganda. I'm not saying what I want or what I don't want. I'm just making observations, and maybe I'm completely wrong. Probably, you know, I'm not a prophet, and I am not an expert. An expert, but you know, maybe something completely unexpected will happen, because this is what life is. You know, life is not a chain of events that you know before and that you just, you know, oh, now I do this, then I do that, and I would suspect that most people's lives turn out completely different than they thought, and the left will maybe be the ones who will push the German Reich much more than the right, because right now you also have to acknowledge that the right is in many countries some kind of corporate installation, you know, some kind of fake opposition, you know, where maybe you don't have to expect too much. So maybe the German Reich will be installed by the left, also because the left has become much more authoritarian than before in their values, you know. And it can be that the German Reich will be either pushed by the left, or just there will be a new alliance between very critical thinking parts of the right and critical thinking parts of the left, and they will form like a new faction of just common sense, and they will then take control over these natural chains of events and these natural developments that happen anyways, you know. So the question in the end is not which course is decided, but who sits at the steering wheel, you know, because the wind blows anyways, and the wind blows in the direction where it blows. It's a natural process. The only question is who will sit at the front and be the captain, you know. So yeah, those are my thoughts about the question of will the German Reich come back